Welcome to Fade to Chat, your weekly visit into classic cinema where we rewatch great films, talk through what still works, put out details you might have missed the first time. There's lots of trivia now about these old movies, and that's a lot of fun. I'm Marty Gensius, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Cindy Rotz. Today's episode, we're dialing into Alfred Hitchcock, Dial M for Murder from 1954. I'm not putting any blame on Cindy on this one, but this was Cindy's exciting Hitchcock kind of choice, and we'll talk about what we both thought about the movie in a bit. It's a sleek, wickedly precise thriller about marriage, manipulation, dangerous comfort, of thinking you've planned the perfect crime. But of course, in all Hitchcock films, those perfect plans go asunder. So I'm going to give you a little background, and then Cindy, I'd like to kind of hear your reflections on the film. The film is Dial M for Murder, 1954. Director was Alfred Hitchcock. It's based on Frederick Knott's stage play. And there was an earlier television version of this called Dial M for Murder. It stars Ray Milland as Tony, Grace Kelly as Margot, Robert Cummings as Mark Halliday. And Robert Cummings was in another Hitchcock film about 10 years earlier called Saboteur. It might even been longer than 10 years earlier. John Williams, who pops up in a couple of Hitchcock films, and he's Chief Inspector Hubbard, and Anthony Dawson as Charles Swann, and is just an interesting kind of side little character that gets pulled into this whole thing. It's primarily set in a London apartment, and that's by design. That's why it works for a stage play. I struggled with trying to figure out how putting this together as a movie from a stage play. Sometimes you see people can expand it, so you get more exterior shots, you get people go to the bank or whatever, you get to see that. That is generally off theater stage stuff that occurs. But it really is basically a square shot with the characters playing out as you would see them in a play. So, Cindy, what'd you think? What are your initial comments?
Well, as you said, Marty, I suggested this movie. It just truly is one of my favorites. And I think because, like you said, you think it's the perfect murder. It sounds like the perfect murder. He has it all planned out down to the, every little detail. And then, of course, you see the things that go wrong. And I thought I understood what happened. And I know I'm not going to disclose anything, any spoilers, but I apologize ahead of time to our audience, but I really had to take notes with this movie to keep track of, honest to God, I had to keep track of the key.
Right.
And where that key was and whose key it was. And I literally had my iPad out and I was taking notes during this movie, almost like I would for a class, because I thought if I don't watch this and talk about it pretty quickly, it's all going to get mixed up in my head. And I found that did happen. Even though I said, I've seen this a million times, I kept forgetting, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh yeah, there were very subtle things that kept happening that I had to literally write down to keep it straight in my head. I will
Yeah.
admit the beginning got a little bit tiresome for me when he was talking with uh, the gentleman named Swann,
Yeah.
who he hired to kill his wife. That part got a little tiresome. Like, do we really need to have that much conversation? Let's just get to it.
That's stage dialogue. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's the difference between stage and movies. They
Mm-hmm.
will have these long expositions to formulate or to set sort of
Mm-hmm.
a mood that when you have
Yeah.
films that don't do that. They kind of just move to the action, and I think maybe that's what
Hmm.
you were hoping for.
Yeah. I paid a lot of attention to the color in this movie. Yeah. It was it was a lot of very dull, very dark, very muted colors, except for, and I'm going to point out, I always look at colors because of being a retired art teacher. Basically, the colors were primary colors in this movie.
Hmm.
I,
And it could have been part of the. I mean, it was probably part of the plan, but I think the
yeah.
colors stand out because this is one of the early attempts at colorization or shooting color
Mm-hmm.
stock,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Yeah.
they seem very much popping out at you in terms
Mm-hmm.
of it. One of the things I read was about the change. Now I'm colorblind, so I have a hard time with these nuances, but I read something about the change in Grace Kelly's nightgown
Oh,
and the shades that it went through, and I tried to follow that and didn't quite see it, but there was
her
some
night.
meaning behind that or symbolism behind that. Was it white? Was it a soft blue? It was really kind of hard for me to
Oh,
tell
okay,
with the
okay.
lighting that they had.
I would say it was white, but yeah, because it was at nighttime, there were times when she had like it was like a flower, kind of a silk thing on
Hmm.
her nightgown, and at times the reflection looked a little bit bluish, but
Yeah,
it was definitely white. But the main thing was her wardrobe color changing throughout the movie as the
yeah.
plot changed.
I think I can give us a summary without doing
Okay,
spoilers. I
okay.
remember last time at our last episode, you said watch the key.
Yes.
And it really wasn't, I think I was always confused about the key. When
Mm-hmm.
in my previous watches of this, I haven't seen this in maybe 10 years up until this last week. But I got a little bit of a clue of why one of the keys didn't work
Mm-hmm.
because Swann was in a relationship with another woman. And that was like, oh, that's why that key didn't work.
I
They
missed that
took
too.
they took her apartment key and attempted to use it or swapped it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, watching the keys is a good clue. But it was such a small piece of dialogue that I think in previous
Mm-hmm.
watches I was like, wait a minute, I can't figure out why this didn't work, how this key wound
Mm-hmm.
up here, etc., etc. And then it was like, oh screw it, the movie's almost over. Um, so former tennis champion Tony Wendice, who obviously had been playing Wimbledon because he makes references to Wimbledon, and was in England and living in English, London, where this is set, played by Ray Milland, believes he's been outmaneuvered in love and money, so he tries to outmaneuver the law. When he recruits an old acquaintance to stage a murder that'll look like a burglary, um, and that is Swann, the character actor that we
Mm-hmm.
talked about. Hitchcock turns the apartment into a pressure cooker. Doors, keys, phones, tiny timing details become instruments of suspense. The real drama isn't action, it's the slow discovery of who's watching, who understands,
Mm-hmm.
and who can approve when plan A fails. So, yeah, this is a Hitchcock film. And I found a couple of pictures of Hitchcock from this set. I went with this one. There's another one that is obviously a stage picture. He's sitting there with his finger on a telephone, like he's ready to dial it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he was kind of riding high at this point in his career, and was making a series, I think, of really good films. And as a result, he does he does a really nice job with this film. The question is always, where do you find Hitchcock? Did you look that
Oh
up or
yeah.
did you see it?
Oh
Okay, you
no,
looked
I
it up.
saw it right away. I saw it
Yeah.
right away. That was easy
Um,
one.
there's a point where Swann is in the apartment and Ray Milland's character Tony is trying to talk to him about where they might have met. And they agreed that they met at this large banquet where there is a picture of the large banquet. And you can see Ray Milland sort of superimposed if you're watching the video version of this. And then Hitchcock's at the same table, turning back and looking at the picture. Interesting piece about this was the last film that Hitchcock appeared in picture format.
Hmm.
He was in a lifeboat, in an ad on the back of the paper for weight loss. They had a picture of Hitchcock in lifeboat. But this was apparently the last time. The other movies after this, he always showed up in live form,
Yeah,
and kind of fun with that.
yeah, yeah. That was an easy one. That was his college reunion photo.
Ah,
They had
okay.
gone to college together.
So let's talk a little bit about the characters.
Okay.
I found one of the things I found difficult about this film, maybe with the exception of the inspector, there are no redeeming characters in this film. You think of the main characters. Ray Milland obviously is trying to kill his wife,
Right.
and that creates an issue. He, and personally, I don't care for Ray Milland as an actor. The things
I
I've seen him
agree.
in have been kind of stoic. He even did a Columbo at one point, and still kind of the same one-dimensional way of projecting and talking that he had. But he's playing a bad guy here. He
Right.
wants to kill his wife. He's afraid that he's going to lose any money because she's running around with Bob Cummings, and
Right.
he is certain that she's going to separate from him, and take the money, and he'll be left with nothing.
Right.
So I was, he plays a bad guy in this one. He attempts to set up a murder, and have his wife murdered as a bungled robbery, or what is meant to be
Mhm.
a bungled robbery, in the film. Uh, Probably this I thought was a interesting shift for Grace Kelly. She's not a good person in this film either. She's
Well,
running.
no, cheating on her husband.
She's cheating on her husband.
That's true.
They invite Bob Cummings to come over. His character is Mark Halliday. He is a mystery writer of some sorts,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
they invite him to come over. And Ray Milland actually uses him as an alibi in his attempt to do this. And he's having an affair with his friend's wife. So he's kind of not a good person either. He claims to be out to support Margot, Grace Kelly's role, as much as he can. But still, he's not a character. He's not a person who is of complete virtue.
No.
Um,
Although in their defense, they did stop the affair, what, a year ago or something, but you could tell they were still in love with one
yeah,
another.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Tony Ray Milland's character was afraid that it was going to be the end of his relationship with his wife, and
Hmm.
because he was successful as a tennis player apparently, but when his career in sports faded, he was kind of dependent on his wife's income to be able to manage the lifestyle
Hmm.
he was used to.
Right.
Um, This guy I really like, John Williams.
Yes. Yes.
And I was trying to figure out how many movies John Williams has been in of Hitchcock. Hitchcock uses him as a character actor. I know this film where he plays a lieutenant or a detective on this case, Chief Inspector Hubbard.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays kind of a redeeming character, but he also, there are some lines in the film where they say, well, you guys are used to kind of setting people up. That's part of your process. I think Ray Milland says it to him. And he doesn't outrightly deny that. And he does kind of go and bend the law a little bit to service his needs of catching the killer at the end of the movie.
Good point.
But he's a solid character actor. This weekend, we had lots of snow. There was not a lot on television to watch. The football games had kind of died down. Although I'm not a big football fan, I still was like, I'll watch anything at this point. And then just delved into To Catch a Thief, another Hitchcock film that came out in the next year, I think, that also had Grace Kelly in it, in a completely different character, kind of a young, sly, wise seductress who is interested in Cary Grant, who was a retired jewel thief. And John Williams comes in and plays the insurance agent and kind of works with Cary Grant to try and discover who is stealing all the jewels on the French Riviera.
You're right. I forgot that.
And he has a significant role through the movie and does it well. So I'm not sure if Hitchcock used him in other films. I haven't gone through his IMDb to find out if John Williams was used in others. But I find him kind of a interesting character actor. He died, I think.
He was on TV too, wasn't he?
Yeah, let's take a look. John Williams. Okay, so he had 79 listings as an actor. He was in Battlestar Galactica for 2 episodes in 1979. I think he died in 1983. Hot Lead, Cold Feet, The Feather and Father Gang, Ironside, Lost in the Stars. The episodic television he was on, all I'm seeing is like 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah, that's what I saw too.
Yeah.
I thought he was in that one TV show about the father who had lost his wife and he had those little children.
Family Affair?
Family Affair. Wasn't he in that?
Yeah, he was in 9 episodes of that. Sebastian Cabot was the
That's right.
Was the actor in that. So
that's right.
Just interesting. He was in a Mission Impossible. I'm running through this to see if I recognize any other Hitchcock films. And I probably could just cross-reference that and try and figure it out. But
yeah, now that you say that, To Catch a Thief, I've watched that. He's in that one.
He was in Suspicion. Oh, that was a TV show. So yeah. Anyways, interesting character actor as part of the scenario and recognizable in face.
Yes.
He has that mustache and he does a little bit of combing his mustache through this movie, which is kind of fun.
Yes.
And then the last character actor, well, the last character actor was Swann. And he is played by Anthony Dawson. And I didn't look very much into his background, but he plays an interesting character briefly in this film. Hitchcock, in his true sense, this robbery is foiled by Margot, Grace Kelly, and she grabs a pair of scissors and stabs him in the back as he's trying to strangle her. And then, in true Hitchcock sense, he falls off the table and falls further onto the scissors.
Uh-huh.
Now, I would argue whether that is a fatal injury or not.
Yeah.
If that puncture where it was a fatal injury, we don't know. There's not a lot of blood. It's long before they were able to show that without risking the film. But yeah, those are the main characters within the movie in terms of their experience.
Can we go back to Robert Cummings for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
I looked at him and didn't remember him for this movie. I remembered him in beach movies.
Yeah.
Like he played a professor in those
Right.
not beach blanket bingo, but some of those old beach movies where he was watching the kids on the beach. He was some sort of a professor, and he was a complete, like a funny kind of character in those movies. So this was a different take for me in this one. I didn't even remember him being in this movie because I thought he was in all those old beach movies.
Yeah, he did a lot of episodic television. Of course, he had the Bob Cummings show, which was
Yes,
his
yes.
kind of his signature show.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
looking
didn't
to
remember
see.
him being this serious in this.
Yeah, the Bob Cummings show ran for 169 episodes,
Hmm.
and Ann B. Davis,
Oh yeah,
was
Alice.
in it. Schultze was her name. They called her Schultze. Rosemary DeCamp, Dwayne Hickman was in it. And episodes were from 1955 to 1959. Interesting, I would hate to say this, but unpleasant fact about Bob Cummings was his addiction. I confuse him sometimes with another actor who had severe drinking issues. And so I did a search on this, and his addiction was to methamphetamines.
Oh,
That he had connected with Dr. Feelgood. I forget the name of the actual physician. He was a Hollywood physician and was prescribed medication from like 50 to 54, something like that. And it created problems on the job for him. And so he had to get cleaned up in that process. So his career was kind of damaged by that. He also early on had a disagreement because I think it was Paramount was upset with him for refusing to come based on some conflict. He refused to come to the set, so they docked him. He was, for so many periods of time. He turned around and sued the company and won that lawsuit and got back pay. But still, it created quite a bit of tremor in his career at that time. Interesting character,
know
always kind of played goodies instead of baddies.
yeah.
And had a long career. Died in 1990, born in 1910. His last acting role was on The Love Boat in 1979. So,
Okay. So you said initially before we started the podcast that you really didn't enjoy this movie. And I said I was disappointed to hear that. I mean, you had to enjoy Grace Kelly, if nothing else.
Grace Kelly was, what I enjoyed about Grace Kelly was she was not Grace Kelly in this movie.
Hmm.
In all her other films, you think of Rear Window, you think of To Catch a Thief. She plays this really glamour, and she is really glamorous.
Oh,
But
yeah. In the beginning.
in this film, she's rather disheveled through most of the film, confused. It is a interesting character for her to portray, and it's it's more gripping. So if you look at the last part of this film, her hair's disheveled. Of course, she just got out of prison. She's been in prison for a
Yeah.
year, but still, she's not oh my God, that's Grace Kelly, at least for me. And she had to act in this film instead of portray or be. That's not saying she didn't act in the other films, but
No,
she
I know
turned
what you
on
mean.
the glamorous ingenue in this.
Hmm.
My problem with the movie was it looked like I was watching a stage play the whole time.
Okay.
And, interestingly enough, this film was originally attempted to be shot in 3D.
Hmm.
And the problem with 3D was there was a craze of it just before this in the early 50s. And so Hitchcock went ahead and did it. But when the 3D projection came to the movie theaters, you had projectionists who didn't know how to align it right. So it
Hmm.
looked really crappy. And there were some things in there like a 3D dimensional finger dialing the phone that dropped out of it. They were trying to jazz up production on what was essentially a single camera shot stage play. Um, Plus, things were so layered and in some cases convoluted. Things had to, like, his watch had to go wrong in order for him not to call to let
Hmm.
Swann know. I mean, there were so many holes in this, in the logic in this, that I just kind of needed to follow how this ended because I knew we were going to talk about it. So yeah,
I
not
mean,
if I was gonna say my top two, and I'd have to think more. Uh, this would not be in the top five of my Hitchcock films. I think it would be North by Northwest,
hmm.
followed by Psycho. Somewhere in there is an old black and white film with Robert Donald called The 39 Steps. And
Uh-huh.
that's a a good story and a good kind of mystery of espionage that goes on, and of course the wrong man kind of accusation that goes on in a lot of Hitchcock
Right.
films. In this case, with Dial for Murder, it was the wrong woman. Um,
True.
so yeah,
I'd have
it
to put
was.
Rear Window up there.
Yeah, I would put Rear Window in the top
And
five.
Vertigo, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
Vertigo, eh. Bell Booking Candle, yeah. When you watched this movie, Marty, did there come an intermission in
Yeah,
the, I don't know what version, and that was because of the 3D, correct?
I can only imagine that's what that was about because it's only an hour, a 2 hour film,
Yeah.
under 2 hours. And when the intermission came, I'd forgotten that was part of it. And I was a little
Hmm.
surprised. I'm like, and then I looked at the
Yeah.
time and I'm going,
Yeah.
why do we have an intermission?
Yeah. And it was
Um,
very short. It wasn't like in Lawrence of Arabia. That went on forever. But I read that
yeah,
that was because of the 3D
because of
aspect of it.
well, with
Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia, it was a much longer film, you know.
Much.
Uh,
Yeah. 4 hours.
People needed
Yeah.
to go to the concessions and go to the restroom.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and frankly, the music was better in Lawrence of Arabia, but
Oh, that's true. That
Yeah.
is true. And when we talked about it all being shot basically within the apartment,
Yeah.
like you said, there's very little outdoor scenes. At the beginning, they showed him arriving on the ship, and they showed him, Tony, walking from the apartment one time and her coming to the apartment. But there was very little shown outside the actual apartment. And one thing, again, I had to go back, I watched it 2, 3 times, that bothered me. We talked about the positioning of objects in the movie, in the film.
Mm-hmm.
When she and Robert Cummings are having that discussion about how, they've ended their affair and she doesn't want him to tell Tony, and then they're having this discussion before he gets home, they are standing in the living room and they're in front of a table. And this table has all these glass bottles on it with all their various whiskeys and wines and so on. And there's a chair on the left end, and there's a back of a picture frame. And then in the next shot, they show Tony coming into the apartment. You hear him unlocking his key, and they just show them, the two of them parting, but they don't actually show them. They show it with uh, the shadows of them on the wall, them coming apart, so they aren't
Yeah.
discovered by Tony when he comes in. And I tried so hard to find that same table with all those bottles on it and how it could have been in that placement. And it's just not possible because that table with the bottles is over on the wall when you first come into the apartment. There is no other table with bottles. So that
Yeah.
would have had to have been shot, like they would have had to have those removable walls like we've talked about in other movies,
Yeah.
because that was physically impossible for them to do that.
Yeah. Hitchcock did a lot. I mean, there are some things that I was impressed in. The overhead shot when Ray Milland, Tony, is trying to move things around the apartment before the inspector gets there
Mm-hmm.
to kind of look at it. So there were some angled shots that were typical Hitchcock that took you
Right.
out of the one single camera front on shot.
Yeah.
I also
Yeah.
noticed kind of the blocking in this film
Mm-hmm.
when John Williams,
Excuse me.
his character, the chief inspector, two characters in the middle, and he's doing an exposition and he's going from one end of the camera
Mm-hmm.
to the other end of the camera, staying within the
Mm-hmm.
box. So again, really kind of the visual aspect of feeling, and maybe that was intentional. The physical
Mm-hmm.
aspect of feeling kind of trapped in this apartment and in this situation.
Yeah.
I just noticed John Williams won a Tony Award playing the same role on stage.
Oh.
So he brought his role to the movie, and then I guess that might have been the first one that Hitchcock used him for, because the other one that I could find was To Catch a Thief, which came out a year or two afterwards. There was this string of 3 movies in 53 and 54 that were, or 55, that were involved John Williams and Hitchcock kind of produced these. So he played that role. And then Anthony Dawson on the stage play is a blackmailed Captain Lesgate, and it rewritten to, I guess, be Spawn in this film. So
Yeah.
you see people coming from stage to do film in this case. So
I thought also it was interesting you talked about the blocking, and I've learned that term from you. I didn't realize you know more of the technical terms than I do. But Grace Kelly in the beginning, when she had on that beautiful red dress, bright red dress with the lace sleeves and the lace back, and that was her best look in the movie when she was her most glamorous. They showed her between her husband and her lover, so to speak, and they were both dressed in dark gray or very dark suits.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that was intentional because she stood out, again, between the contrast between the two of them in that bright red dress. And it was a very close shot between the three of them. And I've always noticed that Tony always had on a gray suit. He just kind of was dull and muted. Mark usually had on a darker blue suit. It was a little more vibrant, but she was the only one that stood out as far as any colors in the movie. And the only other colors were there's a yellow lamp, there were some flowers in the living room that were yellow and white, and there was a blue book.
Hmm.
But other than that, everything was very dull, very dark. Like you said, it was, I'm sure it was intentional, but the apartment, supposedly, she had this money, but it was kind of dull and drab. There was only one painting that I even noticed that had some red flowers in it.
Huh.
Everything else was very, very, very subdued.
Well, I'm glad you're watching that because with Grace Kelly, the only thing I'm watching is her face
Mm,
because she's beautiful. And
yeah.
I'm watching, and I'm not looking at her figure. I'm really watching her face for expressions.
Mm,
And there's a scene in the film where you get a kind of a time lapse progression of her being on trial, then her being sent to prison, then the
mm-hmm.
judgment being made about her execution for death, based on this false premise that she was involved in killing Swann for blackmailing him and trying to
Mailing
prevent the
her.
blackmail. And
Yeah.
that's where you kind of have to really watch her face to see the change in expression and how she's able to do that. I notice the lighting went from lighter to a deep red by the time it got to the execution. So
Mm-hmm.
each one of
Mm-hmm.
those time frames were shot in a different way.
Right.
Um,
But her makeup also, again, from a woman's point of view, she went from having a very vibrant, full face makeup, lots of blush, lots of color in her face, lipstick, beautiful earrings. She had on a beautiful necklace. And then the next time, she had on a darker red dress. It was still red, but it was darker. And she had on just little pearl earrings. And then the next time, it was that gray dress. And like you said, she looked pale.
yeah,
She had virtually no makeup at all, no
her
lipstick,
hair
no
was kind of
earrings.
stringy.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
she looked like she had been through the ringer. And then at the very end, she had on that gray dress with a brown coat thrown over her. A terrible, ugly brown coat. And before, when she had that beautiful red dress on, she had a fur when she was going out in that first scene. She had a beautiful fur around her shoulders. So she really changed dramatically in her appearance throughout the movie.
Um, so interestingly enough, I've got a list of double pairings. Recommended pairings if you want to do a double feature. And this weekend in our part of the country, it would have been a great time for a double feature.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I did this by accident. I watched To Catch a Thief from 1955 with Grace Kelly, and her seductiveness in that film is
Mm,
subtle and just traps Cary Grant in it. So I watched To
yeah.
Catch a Thief along with Dial M for Murder. They're also suggesting Rear Window,
Hmm.
which another kind of contained space Hitchcock view of the
Yeah.
world, which was pretty interesting. And just the whole, we'll do that movie sometime, just the whole production design of that
Yeah.
and the concept behind that. Rope. Have you ever seen Rope?
Yes.
Another
It's
kind
been a
of
while, but I have. Hmm.
controlled space. Um, I'm a little fascinated with the Leopold and Loeb and that case that occurred with Clarence Darrow. And I think it was one of the term papers I had to write for my rhetoric class when I was an undergraduate at the University of Illinois. So I went to the microfiche
Oh
to look
gosh.
at Chicago Tribune from back in that time to read the stories about Leopold and Loeb. So Rope follows that same sort of two guys who want to do a murder just to see what a murder's like
Mm.
kind of theme. There's another movie that I think has Orson Welles in it. It might have been called Obsession, that follows a similar sort of track. And basically, it's the same story, but it's rewritten with different lead characters. And of course, the Clarence Darrow-esque type
Mm.
of prosecutor is Orson Welles. And then they also suggest A Perfect Murder, which is a modern remake of this from 1998. And I have never seen
I have not seen
that
that.
film. So,
Mm.
do you
So
have
were you
anything?
able to follow the keys?
No.
No.
Um, I
That's
couldn't
like I said,
follow
I
the
wrote it down.
I couldn't follow the keys because at some point things didn't work and I didn't have the information that that
Okay.
key belonged to someone else completely unrelated to the group of murderers, if you want to call it that way, or the
Okay.
victim. And so until I got that, and it was this time that I got this piece of information, then I could work back and go, oh, so that was the key he took from his pocket to put outside that wound up not working. And now I understand why it didn't
Mm-hmm.
work.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have to watch it another time with that knowledge in my head to be able to accurately follow where the keys were. The chief inspector makes the comment, the problem with all these flat apartment keys is they all look the same.
Exactly.
And yeah.
Yeah, they
And
call them
then,
latch keys.
yeah. And then the at the end of the film, without doing any spoilers, chief inspector has to have proof that Margot or Grace Kelly's doesn't really know where the extra key was hidden. And so he sets her up to come back to the apartment to kind
Mm-hmm.
of test that hypothesis. So yeah, I mean it is follow the keys.
The Swann was supposed to come in through the front door. He let the key underneath the stair carpet. And he said, when after you have killed her, take the key and return it to the stair carpet. But because he is killed, Margot actually kills him. When they find the body, the key that they find in his pocket is actually his own pocket, his own key. So her key is still under the stair carpet. He didn't put it in his pocket. He returned it before he came in to kill her. He was supposed to have it on him. So when Tony takes the key out of Swann's pocket, he thinks it's Margot's key, but it's Swann's own key.
Mm-hmm.
And she comes back to the apartment thinking it's her key in her purse. It's Swann's key all along, and she cannot get into the apartment. And then they bring Tony back to the apartment with her handbag that he picked up from the police station. He can't get into the apartment because, again, it's Swann's key. And he thinks, why isn't this key working? And he starts to leave, and then he comes back, and he realizes that, oh, that's Swann's key because he took it off him when he was killed. And he reaches under the stair carpet and realizes that because Swann was killed, that key is still under the stair carpet. When he went into the apartment, he unlocked the door and he returned it to the stair carpet rather than putting it in his
Right.
pocket. So her key was there all along.
And Chief Inspector had to determine whether she knew the key was there.
Yes.
The
And
Chief Inspector found the key but left it there.
no,
No?
no. The chief inspector wanted to look at Tony's bank book. So he borrowed Margot's key. He stole it from her at the prison, and he couldn't get into the apartment. And he
Yeah.
thought, why can't I? He couldn't get in. So when Tony came back, he switched coats with him, remember?
Right.
And he borrowed Tony's key to get into the apartment.
Yeah.
He used, no, he used Tony's key to get into the apartment.
Yeah. I'm sure he
And
did.
Tony had the inspector's raincoat, which had no key in it. He took his key out. He had no key. So when Tony came back the first time, he couldn't get in. He had no key. Now, it was the whole switching the raincoat. That's the only way the inspector could get back in the apartment, with Tony's key.
But the inspector knew the presence of that key. During the film, he says, oh, yeah, I found that key within 15 minutes under the carpet.
A
So,
half an hour. He said he did find
yeah,
it then later, after he
yeah,
came back and couldn't get in.
yeah,
He couldn't
okay,
get in with Grace Kelly's key.
yeah.
And he realized that the key that Grace Kelly had was the one that came off of Swann's body that went to his girlfriend's apartment.
Okay. Um, I really don't think we created any spoilers for our
No.
listeners if they haven't seen the film. Y'all watch the film and you figure it out.
Yeah.
For us,
Yeah.
maybe. In terms of it. But yeah, it is a matter of paying attention to the keys and not assuming that the keys are what they intended to be. Because I
Yeah.
also heard that the key in Swann's pocket that got swapped out was not necessarily his key, but his girlfriend's
Yeah,
flat's
it was to
key.
her
To
apartment,
her,
and the
yeah,
inspector
that
found that out too.
and went over and he went over and
Hmm.
tested it at her
Hmm.
apartment. So
He found that
yeah,
out.
um,
And Margot didn't know it all along. If she had come back, when they brought her back to test her, if she
yeah,
had known that her key was under the stair carpet,
yeah.
then she would have been guilty, but she didn't know that.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said. I had to write it down, and it got very complicated.
Yeah, I'm stopping here.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you if you have any more to add
Oh, God.
to the discussion on this movie.
Um, the only thing, what did I write down? Oh, things like we talked about colors and her wardrobe. The only other thing I realized, where did I read that? Oh, Hitchcock said that because he said he did his best to avoid going outside. Of course, the majority of the film takes place in the living room. He even had the floor made of real tiles because he wanted to get the sound of the footsteps.
Hmm. Yeah, the only outside shots you get are viewing from the inside, looking out a window.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's
Yeah. And
that's
you,
interesting.
yeah, and you would, I guess he wanted the sound of the footsteps to be very clear because you wanted to hear him coming to the apartment while they were waiting inside to see if he was going to get in with the key or not.
Yeah.
They were waiting to see if he was going to actually be able to do that.
It's interesting. This movie came out in 1954. There was, of course, it was already a popular stage play, so people were primed to go see this from a Hitchcock point of view. But the thing that it's followed up with To Catch a Thief, which is a much softer kind of
Mm,
suspense film. It's not a high end suspense film altogether.
right.
It's much more stylized in that way and kind of basically takes a swipe at the rich folks in terms of
Mm,
their jewels and their expenses and so it's a completely different tone in that film, but again, two very successful films for Hitchcock at that time. So, and then the Rear Window was
mm,
1954 also, which goes back to the kind of suspense or thrill that Hitchcock has with the movies. So,
We should talk about that.
talk about what? Rear Window?
Rear Window. We should do that one. She was so beautiful in that movie with Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any other comments on this?
Oh, not really. I mean, again, I think everyone should watch the movie. Like I said, the beginning of it got a little bit long for me, but you really have to pay attention. 'Cause even though you saw how mixed up I got, you got to pay attention to that key and whose key it is, and yeah. But it's a good movie, and justice is served at the end. He's caught, and
So, what are
he's
we doing next?
we are doing Marty.
How to
How
Steal
to
a
Steal a
Million.
Million. How to Steal a Million. Audrey
From
Hepburn.
from 1966. Again, a little bit on the extent of where we are. In Audrey Hepburn, we discussed this, and maybe we should have chosen something a little earlier. We'll go with How to Steal a Million. There is like three phases to her career. It started with Roman Holiday, and it introduced her kind of as an ingenue and a comedic kind of actress. And then you get her in a few musicals where she is in kind of that Hollywood musical, colorized kind of version of films. Then she does Holly Golightly in Breakfast at Tiffany's. And we see a different kind of stretch for her, which is interesting. And then this is, again, not towards the end of her career, but towards the end of where our kind of area is. We're doing How to Steal a Million. And it's probably not that well of a known film unless people are following TCM and they pick it up every once in a while. It's got Peter O'Toole, and we did Peter O'Toole with Lawrence of Arabia in a different kind of role. It's meant to be a light comedy with a little bit of suspense in it. And it's sort of one of my favorite, I don't know, comfort foods or comfort films that I can have running in the background and check in at any time. And I fall in love with Audrey Hepburn every time I see it. And some other interesting character actors. We'll talk about Hugh Griffith and what a pain in the butt he was as an actor on most sets. So yeah. And Charles Boyer is in it.
Oh,
So there you go.
there you
We
go.
circle back to Gaslight and Eli Wallach and Mustachio. You'll have to look up Mustachio. Let me see if I can
Now, you
find
know,
a
I'm going to
little-
have to watch this as soon as we're done. That's what happens. Because there's nothing else to do today. 12
Yeah.
inches of snow, although the sun's out today. I mean, I could drive if I needed to go somewhere.
Yeah,
But
check the
no, I'll
roads.
stay in. Oh, I
Yeah.
will. Yeah. I don't need to
Yeah.
go anywhere.
Yeah, there is a
But How to
character
Steal a
actor in
Million.
there that is a comedian who has a big mustache, and I think they refer to
Oh,
him as Mustachio. So yeah, interesting cast of characters. I encourage folks to take a look at the film if they haven't seen it before. You probably, if you have TCM, can do video on demand to get that film if you want to have access
okay.
to it to watch it before we do our next episode. I've got some
Okay.
traveling coming up, so I've got to kind of look at my
Mm,
schedule and see when we can record again. Generally, we've been
okay.
recording on Monday mornings, and a new episode comes out then Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning. So look for that. But next time, it's going to be How to Steal a Million from 1966 with Audrey Hepburn and Peter O'Toole as the principal characters in that, and a really kind of weird Hugh Griffith. That's all I'll say.
Okay. Can't wait to see it. It's been a while, so I don't really remember this movie, so I'm anxious to watch it.
It's clever.
Do
It's a
that
clever
later
film.
today.
Whether all the things work in it that as they do, if they worked in real life, we don't know, but it's
Wow.
a clever film.
Okay.
That's it for this episode of Fade to Chat. If you enjoyed today's deep dive into Dial M for Murder, please subscribe. Not getting any money for this. I don't want to monetize this at all. I just subscriptions and comments. Leave a review, especially a positive one. It helps classic films and fans of classic films. Share the episode with a friend who loves Hitchcock. We will do another Hitchcock at some point. We've done 3 actually now at this point.
Yeah.
And you love the mystery plots. We'll get to them. We'd love to hear what you think of the film and what you think of the show. You can always email us at thepodtalknetwork@gmail.com. thepodtalknetwork@gmail.com. Our website is thepodtalk.net, and you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@fade-to-chat for all previous episodes, and you can find the audio portion of this, the audio version of the show on all your podcatchers just simply by searching Fade to Chat, and you'll get the show and then get the episodes. Thanks, Indy, for doing this. Thanks for taking me down this path with Dial M for Murder.
You're welcome.
And we kind of alternate what's next. Each time before we start the show, we try to figure out what the movie is going to be. And it's going to be How to Steal $1 Million. I'm Marty Gensius. Until next time, keep watching the classics, and we'll see you as we fade to chat.